Evening everyone, this is Shadi Abu Yusuf, still talking about classroom management. This time it is episode 4. And in this episode we're going to talk about asking students to raise their hands in the classroom. And there is no need to remind you one more time that we're talking here about teaching adults. So that's the age group we're targeting in these videos. So let's start with today's first question, which is, should we ask adult students to raise their hands before they speak? Well, and that's a very good question. And the reason why I think this is a very good question is because this is something that we've seen a lot in so many classes, maybe when we were students before, and maybe also we know that this is still happening in so many schools as well. And I'm not saying that is it's wrong all the time, and I'm not saying also that it is good all the time, but what we're trying to cover in today's episode is whether this is appropriate for actually an adult classroom or not. So I would say, as an answer for this question, if you're teaching adults, please don't ask them to raise their hands whenever they want to say something. And the reason why I say this takes us to this point here. Think about reality. What happens in reality when we're discussing something in a group as adults? Like, I want you to imagine this situation. You're sitting with your friends, right? And you're talking together, maybe 5 or 6, maybe more. And again, you're discussing a topic. Normally in reality, we don't ask people to raise their hands before they say something because it sounds childish. Why should I raise my hands? I mean, we don't even do this with our children at home, right? So, and what we believe about teaching, that we try to make teaching as natural as possible, and we try always to turn our classrooms into a natural place where students feel comfortable and they do things that are really appropriate for their age, and also things that are very close to what happens in real life. So I would say, in reality, we don't ask people to raise their hands before they speak. I know that some people might say, but wait a minute, Shadi, this might result in so many problems. And this is also part of what we're going to talk about today. But again, let's agree that when we discuss something with adults, okay, and when the atmosphere is very comfortable and it's not formal and it's everybody is at ease, we don't ask people to raise their hands, right? Okay. Now, so let's watch 2 video clips and back to back, and then check which one sounds more appropriate with adult students. And I actually recorded these 2 videos with some of my adult students, and I want you to watch both videos and tell me, which one do you prefer? Let's do that. So let's talk about traveling. So who's interested in traveling?
I'm interested in traveling.
Okay, so can you tell me a bit about this?
It's really amazing. You have to visit many countries all over the world. It was interesting. I had a lot of fun there.
I've traveled before to America. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And I lived there for about 2 years.
Wonderful. Which state in America?
New York.
Just 1 second, I'll come back to you. So can you tell me more about this?
Yeah, it was really amazing. I traveled with my cousins, and we spent about 5 days in New York, and we traveled all the states in America.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, and what about?
Yeah, I've seen dreaming to travel to Italy one day. I mean, I've seen a lot of pictures on the internet about how nice it is, but I don't have money to travel.
The money will come, I'm sure. The money will come in time. No worries about this. So what about you, listener?
I want to travel to Turkey.
Oh, you've never been to Turkey?
No. I've been before to Saudi Arabia because I was born there.
Oh, really? You didn't know that?
So I traveled and came sometimes, and now I will travel.
Okay, wonderful.
Place.
Wonderful. Okay.
I've never traveled abroad, and I'd like to have the chance to travel.
So do you want to do that?
Yes.
Which country would you think of?
The UK.
Right.
It deserves.
Okay, everybody. everybody. So we're talking about traveling today. So who's interested in traveling?
I love traveling.
Yeah, myself.
Okay, raise your hand, please. Yes.
I love traveling. I mean, I would like to travel to, let's say, at least 20 countries.
And which country would come on the top of the list?
I would say maybe France, Italy, those countries in, let's say, European countries, or even Arab countries.
Have you ever been to Europe before?
No, that's new ones.
Yeah. Okay, so what else? What about who else is interested in traveling?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't travel really. I traveled to many countries all over the world, and it was interesting.
Which country did you like most?
Turkey. It was really amazing.
I'd love to travel, but sorry.
So we raise
Our hands.
Sorry. I'd love to travel abroad, but my family doesn't allow me to travel.
yeah.
Because I'm a girl and you know the Egyptian
Yeah,
culture.
you're a wonderful lady, yeah, sure. Okay, so
I've never. Yeah, sorry. I've never traveled abroad, but I love traveling.
Yeah.
But I have not much time to.
yes. So, as we watched in the two previous videos, in the first video, it was a normal discussion. The teacher is talking to students about traveling, students are answering the question, and the teacher is not asking anyone to raise hands before they voice their opinions. So, and I believe this is more appropriate with adult students. You don't need to ask them to raise their hands every time they're trying to answer something. And also, as you might have noticed, when one student was interrupting the other, the teacher actually said, okay, well, just let me listen to this opinion and I'll come to you. So again, it's always possible for the teacher to manage the classroom nicely without asking the students also to raise their hands. And one by one, students get used to this style, and it becomes a classroom habit. Right, now also think about the second video. In the second video, it was, for me, I would say, it was weird. Why would I ask my adult students every time to raise hands before they answer something? It's a bit childish, and I don't see a very good rationale behind it, right? So I would always go with the first version of the video, which is giving the floor to adult students to speak, and also without asking them to raise their hands. Right. But some people would say that, but wait a minute, Shadi, there might be some problems with if we're not going to ask students to raise their hands. So how are we going to deal with these problems? So let's think about these problems one by one. And we would say the first problem is students are speaking at the same time. And a lot of teachers would say that. What we do, Shadi, what would we do if we ask the questions and all the students are answering at the same time? I'd say you can all say, okay, everybody, okay, let me listen to John here. So again, you can always nominate. If you feel that a lot of the students are answering at the same time, you can actually pick one student, say, okay, please, John, yeah, right, thank you. And if he gave the answer, so what do you think? Do you agree with John's answer? And it goes like that. So this is not also, this is not a big deal. We can deal with this. Another anticipated problem, people might say, oh, but what if the students are not saying anything at all? Like you ask the students, who's interested in traveling, and then all of them don't want to speak. Well, again, I would try to give an example myself so that I encourage the students to speak, and then, or maybe I would nominate. So, what do you think, Soliman? What do you think, George? What about this, Mina? Okay, so I can always ask and nominate also students, so that's also not a big problem. Someone else might say, but students might be interrupting each other. And I'd say, yeah, we do this in reality, and sometimes actually it's a skill to teach your students how to interrupt others politely, because this is what we do in everyday's in everyday's conversations. So sometimes I say, oh, wait a minute, but allow me to say here. So we always interrupt other people, but nicely. And this is something that the students need to learn, and they need to actually acquire these conversational strategies. And I'd say if you as a teacher notice that one student is interrupting the other in an impolite way, and when I say impolite way, it's not because this student intended to do this. It's maybe because this student does not have the speaking strategies that would allow him to do this in a good way. And here is the teacher's role. You will interfere and you say, okay, just wait a minute, John, a bit here. I want to listen to what George has to say about this, and then I'll come back to you. So you can always interfere and manage your class as well. Right. Another problem, some people might say, some students volunteer to answer all the time. Like whenever you're saying something, there is this student who will be the first to say this thing. Okay. Well, and again, nomination is the answer. So when this student actually volunteers to say something, say, okay, wonderful, Jack, but I want to listen to Muhammad a bit here. Okay, so what do you have to say about this, Muhammad? So what do you think, Jack? Do you agree with him on this? And this is what would happen. So again, you're the teacher, you're in the classroom, and you can judge situations. Right. Another problem, some people might say, but wait, Chaddy, some classes are too large. And if we do what you're telling us here, it would be really difficult to see even which students want to share. And someone might say, well, I'm talking here about classes that have 100 students. And I would say it's a bit hard to imagine a context where you have 100 students, adult students in a classroom, unless we're talking about university students, because university students are adult students, and sometimes, yes, they receive English language teaching in big halls where you have like 500 students or something. And in this scenario, if it is really difficult, well, raising hands, wouldn't be a problem. So again, what we say is that, again, you're the teacher, you are in the situation and you see what might work for your students. But generally speaking, I will say, if you have a normal adult students class and the size is normal, like you've got 12 students in the classroom, 20 students in the classroom, you can still do that even with 30 students in the classroom. No problem. You don't have to ask them to raise their hands every time they want to answer something. Okay, so now let's move from this point here and talk about professional courses. And again, how would what we talked about today affect your grading on professional courses? And let's take the CELTA as an example. And CELTA stands for Certificate in English Language Teaching for Adults by Cambridge Assessment English. And look at this criteria here, which is 1D, establishing good rapport with learners and ensuring they're fully involved in learning activities. And again, raising hands goes under this criteria. And the reason is you're teaching adults and you need to be aware of how adults want to be treated, and they want to be treated in a normal way. They don't want to be treated like children or like primary students or secondary students. They want to be treated according to their age. So again, if you don't use an appropriate way of getting them to share in the classroom, that would affect rapport, which is a very, very important criteria on all professional courses in teaching. Right, now, it was actually wonderful talking to you again, and if you would like to contact me, you've got my blog, which is www.shadi.blog, or you can send me an email at me@shadi.blog. So I'll be waiting for all of you. And if you like this video, so please don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and activate notifications on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. See you again. Bye bye.